The alarm clock rang at 4:30 in the morning. Ji-won Park opened her eyes in the darkness and reached over to stop the noise. She sat up in bed and rubbed her face with both hands. Through her small window, she could see the first hint of light touching the horizon. Another day was starting. She got dressed quickly in the cold room. Jeans, boots, and a thick jacket. Her breath made small clouds in the air. The house was quiet. Her parents and two younger siblings were still sleeping. Ji-won walked downstairs carefully, avoiding the steps that creaked. In the kitchen, she made coffee and drank it while looking out at the farm. 200 acres of corn and soybeans stretched out in the darkness. Her father had worked this land for 20 years. His father had worked it before that. Now Ji-won worked it too every morning before school. She walked outside into the cold September air. The sky was getting lighter now, turning from black to deep blue. She could see the rows of corn stalks waiting for harvest. Her father said they would start next week if the weather held. Ji-won went to the barn first. The cows needed feeding. She filled their troughs with hay and checked their water. Then she moved to the chickens, scattering feed and collecting eggs. She counted them automatically. 42 eggs. That was good. She did quick math in her head. If they got 42 eggs per day for 7 days, minus the dozen they used for the family, they could sell 210 eggs at the farmer's market. At $3 per dozen, that was $52.50. She was always doing math like this. It came naturally to her like breathing. By 6 o'clock, her father came out to join her. He was a quiet man with rough hands and a weathered face. He nodded at Ji-won and smiled a little. "Morning," he said. "Morning, Dad." They worked together in comfortable silence, checking the irrigation system and looking at the crops. Her father walked slowly between the rows of corn, touching the stalks and feeling the soil. "Soil's getting dry on the west end," he said. "We need to adjust the watering." Ji-won looked at the irrigation pattern. She had been thinking about this. The water distribution was not even across the field. Some areas got too much water, others too little. She had noticed a pattern in how the water spread through the soil. It reminded her of something she had seen in her math textbook. Fractals, they were called. Patterns that repeated at different scales. "What if we changed the angle of the sprinklers?" she asked. "Instead of straight lines, we could use a pattern that follows the natural slope of the land." Her father looked at her for a long moment. He did not understand math the way she did, but he trusted her thinking. Over the years, her suggestions had saved them money and improved their yields. "Show me," he said. Ji-won grabbed a stick and drew in the dirt. She sketched the field and marked where the sprinklers were. Then she drew a new pattern, one that branched out like tree roots. Her father watched carefully. "This way, the water follows gravity naturally," she explained. "Less water wasted. Better coverage," her father nodded slowly. "We can try it on the west field first. If it works, we'll do the rest." By 7 o'clock, Ji-won was back in the house, washing up and getting ready for school. Her mother had made breakfast. Eggs, toast, and bacon. Her younger brother and sister sat at the table, still sleepy. "Did you finish your homework?" her mother asked. "Yes, last night." This was not exactly true. Ji-won had finished her regular homework in 20 minutes during lunch. But she had spent 3 hours working on college-level calculus problems she had found online. Her school only offered basic math classes. She had finished all of them by her sophomore year. Now she taught herself from books and online courses. Her math teacher, Mrs. Henderson, had noticed her talent years ago. She gave Ji-won special assignments and let her work independently. Mrs. Henderson often said Ji-won was the smartest student she had ever taught. Ji-won did not think she was special. She just liked solving problems. The school bus came at 7:30. Ji-won grabbed her backpack and walked down the long driveway to the road. The bus was half empty. Most of the kids from farming families sat quietly, tired from morning chores. The bus rumbled along the country roads, picking up more students. At school, Ji-won went through her classes automatically. English, history, chemistry, Spanish. She paid attention and took notes, but her mind wandered. In chemistry, she thought about soil composition. In history, she wondered about the mathematical patterns in economic cycles. Everything connected to math in her mind. During lunch, she sat with her two friends, Sarah and Mike. They talked about the football game on Friday and who was dating who. Ji-won listened but did not have much to say. Her life was different from theirs. She worked every morning and every evening. She did not go to parties or games. She did not have time. After lunch, she had study hall. Mrs. Henderson had arranged for Jiwon to use this time in the library, working on advanced problems. Today, Jiwon was working through differential equations. She filled page after page with calculations, completely absorbed. Jiwon? She looked up. Mrs. Henderson stood beside her table holding a folder. Can we talk for a minute? Sure, Mrs. Henderson sat down. She looked nervous, which was unusual. She was normally confident and cheerful. I did something, Mrs. Henderson said. I hope you're not angry. Jiwon waited. I submitted an application for you. To MIT, their scholarship program for students from rural communities. Mrs. Henderson spoke quickly, as if she needed to get the words out fast. I used your test scores and some of the problems you've solved. I wrote a recommendation letter. I know I should have asked you first, but I was afraid you would say no. Jiwon stared at her. MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the best schools in the world. She had looked at their website once, late at night on the old family computer. She had seen the tuition cost and immediately closed the browser. It was impossible, a dream too big to even consider. Mrs. Henderson, my family can't afford that. It's a full scholarship, Mrs. Henderson said. Everything paid for. Room, board, tuition, books, everything, if you get in. If she got in. Jiwon felt something strange in her chest. Hope mixed with fear. When will we know? Applications were due last month. They should send decisions in December, 3 months away. Jiwon tried to imagine it. Leaving the farm, going to a school where everyone was brilliant, learning real mathematics from real professors. But what about her family? Who would help with the morning chores? Who would help her father with the harvest? Don't tell my parents yet, Jiwon said quietly. Not until we know, Mrs. Henderson nodded. Okay, but Jiwon, I really think you have a chance. You're special. You deserve this opportunity. That night, Jiwon worked in the barn after dinner. She was supposed to be organizing tools, but instead she sat on a hay bale with her notebook. She worked through a complex problem about optimization theory. The barn was quiet except for the sound of the cows moving in their stalls. Her father found her there at 9 o'clock. Still studying? He asked. Just finishing something. He looked at her notebook but did not ask about the strange symbols and numbers. He never did. He sat down on another hay bale and was quiet for a moment. You're going to leave here someday, he said. It was not a question. Jiwon looked up at him. Dad, it's okay, I know. Your mother and I, we've always known. You're meant for something bigger than this farm. He smiled, but it was sad. We're proud of you. Don't ever forget that. Jiwon felt tears in her eyes. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. That night, she lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere far away, there was a place called MIT. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. But the thought scared her almost as much as it excited her. She fell asleep thinking about equations and cornfields and the long road that stretched out before her, leading to places she could barely imagine. The letter came on a Tuesday in December. Jiwon saw it when she came in from the morning chores. The envelope was thick and heavy with MIT printed in the corner. Her hands shook as she picked it up from the kitchen table. Her mother stood by the stove watching her. What is that? Jiwon had told them everything after Mrs. Henderson submitted the application. Her parents had been quiet at first, then supportive. But they all knew it was a long shot. Thousands of students applied to MIT every year. Very few got in. It's from MIT, Jiwon said. Her mother wiped her hands on her apron and came closer. Her father walked in from the back door. Even her younger siblings stopped what they were doing. Everyone watched as Jiwon opened the envelope with trembling fingers. She pulled out the letter and read the first line. Then she read it again to make sure. I got in, she whispered. Full scholarship. Her mother made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Her father stood very still, his eyes wet. Her little sister squealed and hugged her. For a moment, the small kitchen was full of noise and happiness. But then reality set in. Jiwon would be leaving in 8 months. Leaving Kansas. Leaving the farm. Leaving everything she knew. That night at dinner, they talked about practical things. How she would get there. What she would need. How the farm would manage without her help. Her father said they would hire someone part-time for the busy seasons. Her brother, now 14, said he would take over the morning chores. We'll figure it out, her mother said firmly. This is your chance, Jiwon. You have to take it. The next months passed in a blur. Jiwon finished her senior year at the top of her class. She worked on the farm every day, trying to memorize everything. The smell of the soil, the sound of the wind through the corn, the way the sunset looked from the west field. She wanted to remember it all. In August, her parents drove her to the airport. It was the first time Jiwon had ever been on a plane. She hugged her family goodbye, trying not to cry. Her father pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand. "For when you need it," he said. On the plane, she unfolded it. Inside was $200 in cash and a note in her father's careful handwriting. "You can do anything. Love, Dad." Boston was overwhelming. The city was huge and loud and full of people rushing everywhere. Jiwon took a taxi from the airport to MIT, watching the buildings get taller and the streets get busier. When the taxi pulled up to the campus, she felt her stomach drop. The buildings were beautiful. Old brick structures mixed with modern glass towers. Students walked confidently across the campus, laughing and talking. Everyone looked smart and sophisticated. Jiwon looked down at her jeans and worn boots. She felt like she was from another planet. Her dorm room was small but clean. Her roommate had not arrived yet. Jiwon unpacked her single suitcase. She did not have much. Clothes, books, her notebooks full of math problems, and a framed photo of her family standing in front of the barn. The next few days were orientation, tours of campus, meetings with advisors, information sessions. Jiwon felt lost most of the time. Other students talked about their high schools in places like New York and California. They mentioned programs and opportunities Jiwon had never heard of. Some had already taken college-level courses. Some had research experience. Some had parents who were professors or scientists. Jiwon said very little during these sessions. She listened and learned and tried not to feel inferior. Her roommate arrived on the third day. Her name was Rebecca, and she was from Connecticut. Her parents drove her in a new SUV packed with expensive belongings. Computer equipment, a nice desk chair, decorations for the room. Rebecca was friendly and talked constantly. She asked Jiwon where she was from. "Kansas," Jiwon said. "My family has a farm." "Oh, wow," Rebecca said. "That's so cool." "Like you actually grew up on a farm?" "Yes, that's amazing. I've never met anyone from a real farm before." Jiwon was not sure if Rebecca was being genuine or condescending. She decided it did not matter. She smiled and helped Rebecca unpack. Classes started the next week. Jiwon's schedule was intense. Advanced calculus, linear algebra, physics, computer science, and a writing course. She sat in the back of most classes, taking notes carefully. The other students seemed so confident. They asked questions, challenged the professors, debated theories. Jiwon stayed quiet. She understood the material. Sometimes she understood it better than the students who spoke up. But she did not feel comfortable speaking. She felt like an imposter, like someone who did not belong. In her second week, she had her first advanced mathematics lecture with Professor Chen. He was a small man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had published many important papers. Jiwon had read some of them online. Professor Chen started the lecture by writing a problem on the board. It was long and complex, full of symbols and equations. "This," he said, "is an unsolved problem in topology. It's been unsolved for 40 years. Many brilliant mathematicians have tried to solve it. I show it to you not because I expect you to solve it, but to demonstrate the kind of thinking we do here. Real mathematics is about tackling problems that have no known answers." Jiwon stared at the problem. It was about spatial distributions and pattern formation. She copied it carefully into her notebook. That night in her dorm room, while Rebecca watched videos on her laptop, Jiwon studied the problem. Something about it felt familiar. The way the patterns distributed through space. The way the equations described growth and spread. She thought about the irrigation system on her family's farm. She thought about how water moved through soil, following paths of least resistance, branching and spreading. She started sketching in her notebook. Not mathematical symbols at first, just drawings. Root systems. Water channels. The natural patterns she had observed her whole life. The next few weeks were hard. The workload was crushing. Problem sets took hours. Jiwon spent most of her time in the library, working through assignment after assignment. She rarely spoke to anyone outside of class. She ate quickly in the dining hall and went back to studying. Rebecca tried to invite her to social events. Study groups, parties, campus activities. Jiwon always said no. She did not feel comfortable in those situations. She felt like everyone could tell she was different. that she did not belong, but she kept thinking about Professor Chen's unsolved problem. Late at night, when she was supposed to be sleeping, she would pull out her notebook and work on it. She started seeing connections. The way water distributed through soil was mathematically similar to the topology problem. Both involved optimal distribution through a complex space. She knew she might be wrong. She was just a freshman. What did she know compared to the mathematicians who had worked on this problem for decades? But she could not stop thinking about it. One evening, she decided to go to Professor Chen's office hours. She had never gone before. She was nervous. Other students would be there asking sophisticated questions. She almost turned back 3 times. Professor Chen's office was on the 3rd floor of the mathematics building. When Ji-won arrived, 2 graduate students were already there discussing their research. She sat in a chair outside and waited. After 20 minutes, they left. She stood up, her heart pounding. "Come in," Professor Chen called. Ji-won walked into the office. It was full of books and papers. Professor Chen sat behind a desk looking at her curiously. "You're from my morning lecture, correct?" he asked. "Yes." Ji-won Park. "What can I help you with, Ms. Park?" Ji-won clutched her notebook. "The unsolved problem you showed us. The topology problem. I've been thinking about it." Professor Chen leaned back in his chair. He looked patient but slightly amused, as if he had heard this many times before from overconfident students. "Go on." "I think I see a pattern," Ji-won said. The words came out in a rush. "The way the distribution works in the problem, it's similar to how water moves through soil. On my family's farm, we have irrigation systems. The water doesn't spread evenly. It follows natural patterns based on the soil structure, the slope of the land, gravity. It creates these branching patterns like fractals, and I think the same principle applies to your problem." She stopped, breathing hard. Professor Chen was looking at her differently now. Not amused, focused. "You're from a farm?" he asked. "Yes, in Kansas. And you've observed these patterns yourself?" "Yes, my whole life. I've been working on irrigation optimization since I was 12. Professor Chen stood up. Show me what you're thinking." Ji-won opened her notebook. Her hands were shaking. She showed him her sketches, her drawings of root systems and water channels. Then she showed him how she had started translating these observations into mathematical notation. Professor Chen studied her work in silence. After several long minutes, he looked up at her. "This is interesting," he said slowly. "Very interesting. These observations, if they can be formalized properly, might actually provide a new approach to the problem." Ji-won felt her heart skip. "Really?" "Yes, but it needs work. Serious mathematical work. You would need to develop a rigorous proof, not just observations." He paused. "Would you be interested in presenting your ideas to our graduate seminar? It meets on Friday afternoons. Graduate students and faculty discuss current research." Ji-won's mouth went dry. Present to graduate students and professors? She was just a freshman. She had been at MIT for less than 2 months. Ji-won barely slept for the next 5 days. Every spare moment she worked on developing her ideas. She skipped meals. She stopped going to the dining hall. Rebecca brought her sandwiches and left them on her desk. "Are you okay?" Rebecca asked one night. "You look exhausted." "I'm fine. Just working on something." "You need to sleep. You're going to make yourself sick." But Ji-won could not stop. The problem consumed her. She filled notebook after notebook with calculations. She started seeing the patterns everywhere, in the way crowds moved through the campus, in the branches of trees, in the cracks in the sidewalk. Everything was connected. She called home on Wednesday night. Her father answered. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" he asked. "I'm okay, Dad. Working on something important. Can I ask you about the irrigation system?" Of course, they talked for an hour. Her father described how water moved through different types of soil, how they had adjusted the system over the years, how they predicted which areas would flood and which would stay dry. He did not understand why she was asking, but he answered every question carefully. After the call, Ji-won looked at her notes with fresh understanding. Her father's observations confirmed her mathematical models. The patterns were real. Now she just had to prove it formally. Thursday night, she practiced her presentation. She stood in front of her dorm room mirror, explaining her ideas out loud. Rebecca watched from her bed, trying to follow along. "I don't understand any of this," Rebecca admitted, "but you sound really smart." You're going to do great. Friday afternoon came too quickly. Ji-won put on her best clothes. Jeans, a clean shirt, and her boots. She looked at herself in the mirror. The other graduate students would probably be wearing nicer clothes. But these were what she had. The graduate seminar met in a small lecture room in the mathematics building. When Ji-won arrived 15 minutes early, the room was already half full. Graduate students sat in clusters talking in low voices. They all looked older and more confident. Most of them had laptops open, reviewing notes. Ji-won sat in the front row, her notebook clutched in her hands. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Professor Chen arrived at exactly 3 o'clock. He looked around the room and nodded at Ji-won. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said. "Today we have something unusual. One of my undergraduate students has developed an interesting approach to the Delaunay distribution problem I mentioned in lecture last month. Ji-won Park is a freshman, but she's brought a unique perspective to this problem. I think you'll find her ideas worth considering." He gestured to Ji-won. "Ms. Park, the floor is yours." Ji-won stood up. Her legs felt weak. She walked to the front of the room where a large whiteboard covered the entire wall. Someone handed her a marker. Her hand was shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She turned to face the room. 25 people stared back at her. Graduate students. A few professors she recognized from around campus. All of them brilliant. All of them more qualified than her. "Hi," she said. Her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Hi, my name is Ji-won Park. I'm from Kansas. My family owns a farm." Someone in the back snickered quietly. Ji-won felt her face get hot. But she continued. "I want to talk about water." She turned to the board and started drawing. Not equations, not yet. She drew a field. She drew irrigation sprinklers. She drew how water moved through soil. "On our farm, we have 200 acres of crops. We use center pivot irrigation. That's a sprinkler system that moves in circles. But the water doesn't distribute evenly. It never does." She drew more. "The soil has different densities, different compositions. The land has slopes. All of these factors affect how water spreads." She glanced at the audience. They were watching quietly now. No more snickering. "When I was 12, my father asked me to help optimize our irrigation. We were wasting water. Some areas got too much, some got too little. So I started observing, taking measurements, drawing patterns." She filled the board with sketches. "I noticed the water followed predictable paths. Not random. Predictable. It created branching patterns like tree roots growing underground." Now she started writing equations. Her hand steadied as she worked. Math felt safe, comfortable. The marker squeaked against the board as she translated her observations into formal notation. "These patterns are fractal in nature. They repeat at different scales. And they follow principles of energy minimization. Water takes the path of least resistance. Always." She wrote faster now, building her argument step by step. "The Delaunay distribution problem asks how to optimally distribute points in a complex space. Most approaches try to solve this through pure mathematical abstraction. But what if we think of it as a physical system?" She filled a second whiteboard, then a third. The room was completely silent now except for the sound of her marker. "If we model the space as having properties similar to soil, with varying densities and resistances, then the optimal distribution follows naturally. It's not about forcing points into predetermined positions. It's about letting them find their natural equilibrium, the way water finds its way through Earth." She worked for 30 minutes straight, barely pausing. The mathematical proof flowed out of her. She showed how agricultural observations translated into topological principles, how physical intuition could guide abstract reasoning, how the answer had been in the soil all along. Finally, she stepped back from the board. 3 large whiteboards were covered with her work. Drawings of fields and water patterns gradually transformed into complex equations and formal proofs. She turned to face the audience. "That's what I wanted to share," she said quietly. "Thank you." For a long moment, nobody moved. Professor Chen stood up and walked to the board. He studied her work closely, his eyes moving rapidly across the equations. He pulled out his phone and took pictures. Then he started checking her logic line by line. "Wait," someone said from the audience. A graduate student stood up. "That transformation in the middle section, that's not valid. You can't just apply physical intuition to abstract topological spaces." "Actually," Professor Chen said, still studying the board, "I think she can. Look at how she's defined the metric space. She's essentially created a mapping between physical properties and mathematical structures. It's unorthodox, but I think it's valid. Another graduate student stood up, a young woman with glasses. But the fractal assumption. That's a huge leap. How do you know the optimal distribution must be fractal? Ji-won turned back to the board. Because that's what nature does. In every optimal distribution system in nature, from river deltas to neural networks to root systems, you see fractal patterns. It's not a leap. It's an observation. The math just formalizes what's already there. More people stood up now approaching the board. They studied her work, pointing out sections, discussing her logic. Some were skeptical. Others looked excited. The room filled with rapid technical discussion that Ji-won could barely follow. Professor Chen raised his hand for quiet. Let's be systematic about this. Ms. Park, can you walk us through the key transformation in Section 3? The one where you transition from the physical model to the topological framework. For the next hour, Ji-won answered questions. Some were easy. Some were hard. Some she could not answer at all. But she defended her ideas clearly, explaining her reasoning step by step. When she did not know something, she admitted it honestly. A professor from another department, an older man with white hair, stood up near the end. How long have you been working on this? About 6 weeks, Ji-won said. 6 weeks, he repeated. He looked at Professor Chen. She's a freshman? Yes. The white-haired professor shook his head slowly. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. Finally, Professor Chen called the discussion to a close. I think we need to examine this work more carefully. Ms. Park, I'd like you to write this up formally. A proper paper. I'll work with you on it. We need to verify every step rigorously. But if this holds up... He paused, looking at the boards covered in her work. If this holds up, this could be significant. The room emptied slowly. Graduate students left in small groups, still discussing what they had seen. Several came up to Ji-won to introduce themselves and ask more questions. She answered as best she could, but her mind felt foggy. She was exhausted. When everyone had left except Professor Chen, he turned to her. Do you understand what you've done? He asked. I think I've proposed a new approach to an old problem, Ji-won said carefully. Yes, but more than that. You've shown how practical observation can inform theoretical mathematics. That's powerful. Very powerful. He smiled. Get some rest this weekend. Starting Monday, we're going to work together to develop this properly. It's going to be a lot of work. Are you ready for that? Yes, Ji-won said. I'm ready. She walked back to her dorm in the late afternoon light. The campus was beautiful. Students walked in groups, laughing and talking. For the first time since arriving at MIT, Ji-won did not feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. In her dorm room, Rebecca was waiting. How did it go? Rebecca asked eagerly. Ji-won sat down on her bed. Then she started laughing. Not from humor, but from relief and exhaustion and something like joy. I think it went well, she said. I think it went really well. That night, she called home. Her father answered again. Dad, she said, remember when you taught me about irrigation patterns? When I was 12? Of course, I used that today. In a presentation at MIT. I used what you taught me to solve a problem that mathematicians have been working on for 40 years. There was a long silence on the phone. Then her father said, voice thick with emotion, Your mother always said you were going to do something amazing. She was right. I learned it from you, Dad. Everything I know about patterns and distributions I learned from watching you work. After the call, Ji-won sat at her desk and looked at her notebooks. Somewhere in these pages, in the connection between soil and mathematics, between practical experience and theoretical thinking, she had found something real, something true. She did not know yet if her proof would hold up under rigorous examination. She did not know if she had actually solved a 40-year-old problem. But she knew one thing for certain. She belonged here. Not despite being a farmer's daughter, but because of it. Her background was not a disadvantage. It was her greatest strength. The next 3 weeks were intense. Professor Chen cleared time in his schedule to work with Ji-won every afternoon. They met in his office, going through her proof line by line. He questioned everything, every assumption, every leap in logic, every connection she had made. Mathematics requires absolute rigor, he explained. Your intuition is brilliant. But intuition alone is not enough. We need to prove each step formally. Ji-won learned quickly. Professor Chen showed her techniques she had never seen before. advanced topology, measure theory, functional analysis. She absorbed it all, working late into the night to understand the tools she needed. Some parts of her proof held up perfectly. Others needed work. A few sections had gaps that took days to fill. But slowly, systematically, they built a complete and rigorous argument. Word spread through the mathematics department. The freshman with the unusual approach to the Delaunay problem. Students started recognizing Jiwon in the hallways. Some congratulated her. Others seemed resentful. She heard whispers behind her back. She just got lucky. It's probably wrong. They'll find a mistake. She's just a freshman. What does she really know? Jiwon tried to ignore it. She focused on the work. But the attention made her uncomfortable. She had never wanted to be famous or special. She just wanted to solve interesting problems. In her third week of working with Professor Chen, he called her into his office with unusual urgency. "Sit down," he said. "I have news." Jiwon sat. Professor Chen looked excited, which was rare for him. He was normally calm and controlled. "I've shown your work to 3 other experts in topology," he said. "All of them have reviewed it independently. 2 from universities in California, 1 from Oxford in England. They all agree." He paused, letting the moment hang. "Your proof is correct. You've solved it." Jiwon stared at him. "Are you sure?" "Yes, there's still work to do. We need to write it up properly for publication. But the core proof is sound. You've solved a 40-year-old problem in topology." He smiled. "Congratulations, Ms. Park." Jiwon felt dizzy. She had hoped her ideas were right. But part of her had always expected someone to find a fatal flaw, to prove she had been wrong. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we publish. I'll help you write the paper. It will go to the Journal of Topology. It's one of the most prestigious journals in the field." He leaned forward. "But I need to warn you about something. Once this paper comes out, your life is going to change. There will be media attention. Other mathematicians will want to meet you. You'll get offers for research positions, summer programs, internships. It's going to be overwhelming." "I just wanted to solve the problem," Jiwon said quietly. "I know, but that's not how the world works. A 19-year-old freshman solving a famous unsolved problem. That's news. People will want to know your story." He was right. The paper took another month to write. In January, Professor Chen submitted it to the journal. By February, word had leaked to the broader academic community. By March, the media had picked up the story. It started with the MIT student newspaper. "Freshman solves famous math problem." Then the Boston papers picked it up. Then national news. The story had everything journalists loved. A young woman from a farm in Kansas coming to MIT on scholarship, solving a problem that had stumped experts for decades. Reporters started calling. Jiwon did not know how they got her number. At first, she ignored the calls. But they kept coming. Finally, Professor Chen advised her to do one interview, hoping it would satisfy everyone's curiosity. The reporter was a young woman from a science magazine. She came to campus with a photographer. They wanted to do the interview in a classroom with Jiwon standing at a whiteboard, solving equations. "Can you tell us how you solved it?" the reporter asked. Jiwon explained about the irrigation patterns, about observing water distribution on her family's farm, about connecting practical experience to abstract mathematics. "It's an incredible story," the reporter said. "Farm girl makes good. The American dream." Jiwon felt uncomfortable with that framing, as if her background was just a feel-good story, not a legitimate source of mathematical insight. "It's not really about where I'm from," she said. "It's about seeing patterns. Those patterns exist everywhere. I just happened to notice them first in soil and water. But when the article came out, the headline read, 'From Kansas farm to MIT, how one girl's observations solved a 40-year-old mystery.' The article went viral. Suddenly everyone was talking about her. News channels wanted interviews. Talk shows sent invitations. Her inbox filled with thousands of messages. Most were congratulatory. Some were offers. Some were strange or inappropriate. At school, life became difficult. Students pointed at her in the hallways. Some asked for selfies. Others avoided her entirely, as if she had become untouchable. In her classes, professors treated her differently. Some gave her special attention. Others seemed skeptical, as if waiting for her to fail. The hardest part was the skepticism from other students. She overheard conversations in the library, She probably had help. Professor Chen probably did most of the work. I bet she didn't really solve it. They're just promoting her for PR. It's just affirmative action. They wanted a feel-good story about a poor farm girl. Ji-won tried not to let it bother her. She knew the proof was real. She had done the work. But the words still hurt. One afternoon in late March, she was eating alone in the dining hall when a group of graduate students approached her table. 3 men all older than her. "You're Ji-won Park," one of them said. "Yes. We've been looking at your paper, the Delaunay proof." Ji-won's stomach tightened. Their tone was not friendly. "Okay," she said carefully. "We think there's a problem with your transformation in Section 4, the mapping from physical space to topological space. We don't think it's valid." Ji-won felt her face get hot. Professor Chen and 3 other experts reviewed that section extensively. "It's valid. Or maybe they just wanted it to be valid. Maybe they were too excited about the story to check it properly." Another graduate student spoke up. "You're a freshman. You've been studying mathematics seriously for what, a few months? And you want us to believe you solved something that experts couldn't solve for 40 years? Ji-won stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "The mathematics speaks for itself. If you think there's an error, submit a formal response to the journal. That's how academic discourse works. But don't come to my table and question my work based on nothing but your own skepticism." She picked up her tray and walked away. Behind her, she heard one of them laugh. That night, she called home. Her mother answered, "Sweetheart, we saw the article. Everyone in town is talking about it. The local paper wants to do a story. Mrs. Henderson is so proud. She keeps telling everyone she always knew you were special. Mom, it's hard here. People don't believe me. They think I cheated or got lucky." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember when you were 10 years old? You wanted to enter the county science fair. You built that project about soil composition and plant growth. Remember what happened? The judges said my dad must have done it for me." "That's right. They couldn't believe a 10-year-old farm girl understood advanced biology. But you proved them wrong. You explained every detail of your project, answered every question. By the end, they had to give you first place." Her mother's voice was firm. "You've been proving people wrong your whole life, Ji-won. This is no different. Keep doing the work. Keep being brilliant. The truth will win out." After the call, Ji-won felt better. Her mother was right. This was not new. She had always faced skepticism. She had always overcome it through work and persistence. She spent the next weeks focusing on her classes and ignoring the attention. She stopped reading articles about herself. She stopped checking social media. She just worked. In April, the Journal of Topology officially published her paper. That same week, 3 independent research groups published papers confirming her proof and extending her methods to related problems. One group from Stanford, one from Cambridge, one from Tokyo. All of them cited her work. All of them confirmed that her proof was not just correct, but opened up new approaches to an entire family of problems. The graduate students who had confronted her in the dining hall published a response paper. They had found what they claimed was an error. But within a week, 5 other mathematicians published rebuttals showing that the supposed error was actually a misunderstanding on the part of the graduate students. The criticism made them look foolish, not Ji-won. Professor Chen called her into his office again. "The mathematical community has spoken," he said. "Your proof stands. More than that, it's being recognized as genuinely innovative. You didn't just solve one problem. You created a new methodology." "What does that mean?" Ji-won asked. "It means you've made a real contribution to mathematics. At 19 years old, you've done something that most mathematicians never do in their entire careers." He handed her a folder. "These are invitations. Conferences, workshops, summer research programs. All of them want you to attend." Ji-won looked through the folder. There were at least 20 invitations. From universities all over the world. France, Japan, Germany, England, Canada. "I don't know what to do with all this," she said. "You don't have to do all of it. Pick a few that interest you. The important thing is to keep working. Keep learning. This is just the beginning of your career." That weekend, Ji-won took the train into Boston. She walked around the city, trying to process everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she had been a nervous freshman who barely spoke in class. Now she was being invited to speak at international conferences. She found herself in a bookstore. In the mathematics section, she picked up a topology textbook. It was a new edition, just published. She flipped through it and her heart skipped. In the final chapter, there was a section on new developments in distribution theory, and there on page 487 was her name. The Park method, developed by J. Park at MIT, provides a novel approach to optimization problems by modeling abstract spaces as physical systems. She stood in the bookstore aisle, holding the textbook, staring at her name in print. It felt unreal. She was not just a student anymore. She was a mathematician, a real mathematician whose work was being taught to other students. She bought the book and took the train back to campus. In her dorm room, Rebecca saw the book and squealed, "Is that you? You're in a textbook?" "Apparently." "Jiwon, that's insane. You're a freshman and you're already in textbooks." Rebecca hugged her. "I'm rooming with someone famous." "I'm not famous. I just solved one problem. One problem that nobody else could solve for 40 years. Own it. Be proud." Jiwon smiled. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe it was okay to be proud of what she had accomplished. She had worked hard. She had trusted her instincts. She had connected knowledge from her past to challenges in her present. And she had created something new and valuable. That night, she wrote an email to Mrs. Henderson, her high school math teacher. She thanked her for submitting the MIT application without asking. She thanked her for believing in her when Jiwon did not believe in herself. She attached a PDF of her published paper. Mrs. Henderson replied within an hour, "I always knew you were special. But even I didn't imagine you would accomplish something like this so quickly. I'm going to print out your paper and frame it in my classroom. My students need to see what's possible. Congratulations, Jiwon. You've made us all so proud." Jiwon looked around her dorm room, the photo of her family on the desk, the textbook with her name in it, the acceptance letter from MIT now framed on the wall. Everything had changed. But in the ways that mattered most, everything was the same. She was still Jiwon Park from Kansas, still a farmer's daughter, still someone who saw the world through patterns and connections. The only difference was that now the world was starting to see what she had always known, that mathematics was not just abstract symbols. It was the language of nature itself, and if you knew how to look, you could read that language anywhere, in soil, in water, in the roots of plants reaching through darkness toward light. Summer came quickly. Jiwon returned to Kansas for 3 weeks before starting a research program at MIT. When she arrived at the farm, her family was waiting at the airport. Her little sister made a sign that said, "Welcome home, math genius." Jiwon laughed and hugged them all. The farm looked exactly the same field stretching to the horizon, the same barn where she had studied, the same house where she had grown up. But Jiwon felt different. She had left as a hopeful student. She was returning as someone who had accomplished something real. Her father showed her the new irrigation system they had installed based on her old designs, the branching pattern she had sketched years ago, now implemented across all their fields. "It's working better than the old system," he said. 20% less water, 15% better yields. Your math was right. Jiwon walked through the fields that evening, feeling the soil under her boots. She had been away for less than a year, but it felt like a lifetime. Everything looked smaller than she remembered. The farm that had seemed so vast in her childhood now felt finite and knowable, but it was still home. Still the place where she had learned to see patterns. Still the foundation of everything she had become. During her weeks at home, Jiwon helped with the farm work. She woke at dawn to feed the animals. She drove the tractor. She mended fences. Her hands, which had grown soft from months of holding pencils instead of tools, developed calluses again. In the evenings, she worked on a new research project. Professor Chen had suggested she explore applications of her method to other areas of mathematics. She set up a workspace in the barn just like old times. Her laptop sat next to bales of hay. Her notebooks rested on an overturned bucket. Her younger brother, Min Jun, now 15, often came to watch her work. "I don't understand any of this," he said one evening. Looking at her equations, "That's okay. I didn't understand it either when I was 15. Are you going to stay at MIT? Become a professor?" "I don't know yet, maybe. Dad says you could make a lot of money in the city, working for tech companies or finance firms." Jiwon looked up from her work. "Is that what he wants me to do?" "No, he wants you to be happy. But he worries about the farm, about keeping it going. Money is always tight." Jiwon had been thinking about this too. Her family had sacrificed so much to send her to MIT. They had hired help to replace her labor. They managed, but it was not easy. Part of her felt guilty for leaving. Another part knew she could not stay. "What do you want to do?" she asked her brother. "After high school?" Minjun shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe stay here. Run the farm when Dad gets older. Someone has to. You don't have to. You could go to college. Study anything you want. Someone has to stay," Minjun repeated. "It's our family's land. Our legacy." Ji-won understood. The farm was not just a business. It was part of their identity, their connection to the past and future. But she also knew the weight of that expectation, the way it could limit choices and dreams. Before returning to Boston, Ji-won had a long talk with her parents. They sat at the kitchen table late one night after her siblings had gone to bed. "I've been offered money," Ji-won said, "for speaking engagements, for consulting. Some tech companies want to hire me for summer internships." "That's wonderful," her mother said. "I want to give some of it to you, to help with the farm." Her father shook his head firmly. "No, that's your money. You earned it. I earned it because you gave me the opportunity. You sent me to MIT. You supported my education my whole life. We did that because we wanted to," her father said, "not because we expected something back. Your success is already more than we could have hoped for. But the farm needs help. I can see it. The equipment is old. The barn needs repairs. You're working too hard." Her parents exchanged a look. Finally, her mother spoke. "We appreciate the offer, but your father is right. This is your time to build your own life. Don't worry about us. We've been farming for generations. We'll manage." Ji-won felt tears in her eyes. "I feel like I abandoned you." "Abandoned?" Her father reached across the table and took her hand. "Ji-won, you've made us prouder than you can imagine. Every morning when I work these fields, I think about you at MIT, about what you're learning, about what you're accomplishing. That joy is worth more than money." "Your father's right," her mother added. "We didn't raise you to come back and be a farm worker. We raised you to be whatever you want to be. And right now you need to be a mathematician, so be the best mathematician you can be." When Ji-won returned to MIT in June for the summer research program, she came with renewed purpose. She worked with Professor Chen and a small group of graduate students, exploring new applications of her methodology. The work was challenging and exciting. She also started giving talks. Small ones at first, guest lectures in classes, then presentations at academic conferences. She was nervous every time, but she improved with practice. In July, she was invited to give a keynote address at a mathematics conference in California. It was her first major speaking engagement. She would be presenting to hundreds of mathematicians, including many famous researchers whose papers she had read. The night before her talk, she could not sleep. She reviewed her slides over and over. She practiced her presentation in her hotel room. What if she forgot what to say? What if someone found an error in her work? What if she embarrassed herself in front of all these brilliant people? She called home at midnight, forgetting about the time difference. Her mother answered, voice thick with sleep. "Ji-won, are you okay?" "I'm sorry for calling so late. I'm giving a big talk tomorrow. I'm scared." Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember your first day of kindergarten? You were so scared you cried. You didn't want me to leave. You said all the other kids were smarter and better than you." "I don't remember that." "I do. And do you know what I told you?" "I said everyone gets scared. Everyone doubts themselves. But scared people can still do brave things. You just have to do it anyway. What if I fail? Then you'll learn something and try again." "But Ji-won, you're not going to fail. You know this material better than anyone. You lived it. You discovered it. So tomorrow just tell them what you know. Tell them about the farm. Tell them about the soil and the water and the patterns. Tell them your truth. That's all you have to do." The next day, Ji-won walked onto the stage in front of 500 mathematicians. The lights were bright. The audience was a sea of faces. Her heart pounded. She began speaking. Her voice shook at first, but then steadied. She showed slides of her family's farm, pictures of irrigation systems and crop patterns. Then she showed the mathematics, the equations, the proofs, the connections. She talked for 40 minutes about how practical observation can inform theoretical work, about how the best insights often come from unexpected places, about how mathematics is not separate from the physical world but a description of it. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood. The ovation lasted several minutes. During the question period, hands shot up across the auditorium. Professors asked technical questions. Students asked about her methodology. Everyone wanted to know more. After the talk, people surrounded her. Researchers from Harvard, Stanford, Cambridge, Tokyo. All of them wanted to discuss her work, to propose collaborations, to invite her to visit their universities. One older professor, a woman with white hair and kind eyes, waited until the crowd had cleared. She introduced herself as Professor Martinez from Berkeley. "That was extraordinary," Professor Martinez said. "I've been studying topology for 40 years. Your approach is unlike anything I've seen. It's genuinely original." "Thank you," Ji-won said. "I want to ask you something. Where did you learn to think like that? To see connections between such different domains?" Ji-won thought about it. "I think it came from growing up on a farm. You learn to observe, to see patterns in nature, to understand that everything is connected. The soil affects the crops. The crops affect the water needs. The water affects the soil. Everything influences everything else. Mathematics is the same way." Professor Martinez smiled. "That's beautiful. And it's something many mathematicians forget. We get so focused on abstraction that we lose touch with what mathematics actually describes. The real world." She paused. "I hope you keep that perspective. Don't let academia make you forget where you came from." That night, Ji-won sat in her hotel room and wrote in her journal. She had started keeping a journal on Professor Chen's advice, a place to record ideas and observations. She wrote about the conference, about the people she had met, about the opportunities opening before her. But she also wrote about home, about her family, about the farm and the lessons it had taught her. She wrote, "I used to think I had to leave the farm behind to become a mathematician. But now I understand. The farm didn't hold me back. It prepared me. Everything I know about patterns, about systems, about observation and patience I learned there. I don't have to choose between being a farmer's daughter and being a mathematician. I can be both. I am both." The rest of the summer passed in a blur of work and opportunities. Ji-won gave 3 more talks. She started 2 new research projects. She met with professors about graduate school options. Everyone assumed she would stay at MIT, but she was not sure. Part of her wanted to explore other places, other perspectives. In August, something unexpected happened. A journalist from a major magazine contacted her. They were doing a feature on young innovators in STEM fields. They wanted to profile Ji-won. At first, she hesitated. She had grown tired of media attention. But the journalist explained that they wanted to focus on access to education, on how talent exists everywhere but opportunity does not. They wanted to use her story to talk about supporting students from rural communities and working-class backgrounds. Ji-won agreed. The journalist visited MIT and interviewed her for hours. They talked about her childhood, about the challenges she faced, about the support she received from teachers and family. They also talked about systemic issues. How many talented students never get opportunities because of where they were born, or how much money their families have. When the article came out in September, it was titled "The Genius in the Soil: How One Student's Journey Reveals Gaps in American Education." The article was not just about Ji-won. It featured several other students from rural and working-class backgrounds who had made it to top universities. It discussed statistics on college access. It talked about the potential being wasted when talented students cannot afford higher education. The response was enormous. The article was shared thousands of times. People started discussions about education policy. Some universities announced new scholarship programs for rural students. Others created outreach programs to identify talented students in underserved communities. Ji-won received hundreds of emails from students. Many were from small towns and farming communities. They thanked her for being visible, for showing them that someone like them could succeed in academic spaces that seemed impossibly distant. One email stood out. It was from a 15-year-old girl in Iowa. "Dear Ji-won, I live on a farm like you did. I love math, but everyone here thinks it's weird. My guidance counselor said I should think about something practical, like nursing or teaching. But I want to study physics. I want to understand how the universe works. Your story made me believe I could do it. Thank you for showing me it's possible." Ji-won read that email 3 times. Then she wrote back, "Dear Emily, you can do it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Your perspective as a farm kid is not a disadvantage. It's a strength. You see the world differently than city kids. You understand systems and patterns and hard work. Those skills will serve you well in physics or any field you choose. Keep studying. Keep dreaming. And remember that you belong in science just as much as anyone else. That evening, Jiwon called Professor Chen. She told him about the emails, about the students reaching out. I want to do something, she said. Something to help kids like me. Kids from farms and small towns who love science and math but don't think college is possible. What did you have in mind? Professor Chen asked. I don't know yet. Maybe a scholarship program? Maybe outreach? Maybe both. She paused. I keep thinking about all the talented people who never get a chance. How much potential goes to waste because of circumstances beyond their control. If I can help even a few students, it would mean something. I think that's an excellent idea, Professor Chen said. Let's develop a proposal. MIT has resources for this kind of initiative. We could create a summer program. Bring promising students from rural communities to campus. Give them research experience and mentorship. Jiwon felt excitement building. This felt right, more right than anything else. She had been given an opportunity that changed her life. Now she could help create opportunities for others. She thought about the girl in Iowa who loved physics, about her own brother working on the farm, about all the bright kids in small towns across America who dreamed of something bigger. She could not help everyone, but she could help some, and maybe those students would help others, creating a ripple effect of opportunity and success. For the first time since her paper was published, Jiwon felt like she understood her purpose. It was not just about solving problems. It was about opening doors, about showing people that genius does not only exist in cities or wealthy suburbs. It exists everywhere, in farmhouses and small towns, in unexpected places, in the soil itself. All it needed was a chance to grow. Jiwon's junior year at MIT began with new purpose. While maintaining her coursework and research, she worked with Professor Chen to develop the Rural STEM Scholars Program. They wrote proposals, secured funding from the university and private donors, and designed a curriculum. The program would bring 20 high school students from farming and rural communities to MIT each summer. They would take classes, work on research projects, and receive mentoring from faculty and graduate students. All expenses would be covered. The goal was to show these students that they belonged in top universities, and to help them prepare for the application process. By December, they had received over 300 applications. Jiwon read through them all. Each application told a story similar to her own. Students who loved science and math but had limited resources, who helped their families with farms or businesses, who dreamed of college but were not sure it was possible. Choosing only 20 was heartbreaking. Jiwon wanted to accept them all, but they had to start somewhere. In the spring semester of her junior year, Jiwon took on another role. She started teaching, not formal classes but workshops. She developed a series of lectures titled Mathematics in the Natural World. The workshops were open to all undergraduates, but they particularly attracted students from rural backgrounds. Students who, like Jiwon, had observed nature closely and wondered about the patterns they saw. One student approached her after a workshop. His name was Carlos, a sophomore from rural New Mexico. I grew up on a ranch, he said. I've been watching cattle movement patterns my whole life. The way they group together, the paths they take to water. I never thought of it as mathematics before, but listening to you, I realize I've been observing complex systems my whole life. That's exactly right, Jiwon said. Your observations have value. Write them down. Formalize them. You might discover something important. Carlos did exactly that. By the end of the semester, he had developed a research project on herd behavior and optimization algorithms. Professor Chen agreed to supervise his work. Jiwon realized she loved teaching. She loved the moment when a student's face lit up with understanding, when they saw connections they had never noticed before, when they realized their own experiences had value in academic spaces, but she also struggled with her growing responsibilities. Between coursework, research, teaching, and organizing the summer program, she barely slept. She skipped meals. She stopped calling home regularly because she did not have time. In March, Rebecca confronted her. You're going to make yourself sick, Rebecca said. You can't keep working 18-hour days. You need rest. I'm fine. You're not fine. You fell asleep at your desk twice this week. You look exhausted. Rebecca sat down next to her. I know you want to help everyone, but you can't help anyone if you burn out. Jiwon knew Rebecca was right, but she did not know how to slow down. There was so much to do, so many students who needed help, so many opportunities to create change. That night she called home. Her mother answered and immediately knew something was wrong. What's happening? Her mother asked. I'm trying to do too much. The research, the teaching, the new program. I want to help everyone, but I can't. I'm exhausted and I feel like I'm failing. Jiwon, listen to me. You don't have to save everyone. You're 20 years old. You've already accomplished more than most people do in a lifetime. It's okay to focus on your own education and growth. But I have this opportunity, this platform. If I don't use it to help others, what's the point? The point is becoming the best mathematician you can be. The point is learning and growing. Helping others is beautiful, but not at the cost of your health and happiness. Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. Remember what you tell your students. You can't help others if you don't take care of yourself first. Jiwon took her mother's advice. She started saying no to some opportunities. She set boundaries around her time. She made sure to sleep, eat properly, and take walks. It was hard at first. She felt guilty every time she turned down a request. But gradually she found balance. That summer, the first group of rural STEM scholars arrived at MIT. 20 high school students from farms and small towns across America. Iowa, Montana, Alabama, Oregon, West Virginia. They arrived nervous and excited, just like Jiwon had been 3 years earlier. Jiwon met them on their first day. She looked at their faces and saw herself. The uncertainty, the fear of not belonging, the hope that maybe, just maybe, they could succeed here. I know how you feel, she told them. 3 years ago, I stood where you're standing. I was scared. I thought everyone here would be smarter than me. I thought I wouldn't fit in. She smiled. But I learned something important. Your background is not a weakness. It's a strength. The things you've observed, the patterns you've noticed, the work you've done, all of that matters. You belong here, not despite where you're from, but because of it. Over the next 6 weeks, Jiwon watched the students transform. At first, they were quiet and hesitant. But as they took classes and worked on projects, their confidence grew. They asked questions. They challenged ideas. They contributed their own observations and insights. One student, a girl named Sarah from rural Tennessee, developed a project on optimal farming techniques using game theory. Another student, Michael from North Dakota, used his knowledge of wind patterns to create models for renewable energy distribution. A student named Priya from rural California applied her understanding of irrigation systems to study urban water management. Jiwon saw herself in all of them. Their creativity, their unique perspectives, their ability to connect practical experience to theoretical concepts. On the last day of the program, the students presented their research to faculty and other students. Jiwon sat in the audience watching with pride. These students had accomplished remarkable work in just 6 weeks. More importantly, they now believed in themselves. They believed they could succeed at top universities. After the presentations, many of the students approached Jiwon to thank her. You changed my life, Sarah said, tears in her eyes. I didn't think I could do research. I didn't think I was smart enough. But you showed me I could. You did the work, Jiwon said. I just gave you the opportunity. You always had the talent. You just needed to see it. That fall, Jiwon began her senior year. She was already thinking about graduate school. Several universities had offered her full funding for PhD programs: Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley, Princeton. She could go anywhere she wanted, but MIT felt like home now. Professor Chen had become not just an advisor, but a mentor and friend. The work she was doing felt important. The students she was helping needed her. She decided to stay at MIT for graduate school. She would continue her research and expand the Rural STEM Scholars Program. She would keep teaching workshops. She would keep opening doors for students who, like her, came from unexpected places. In November, she was invited to give a keynote address at a national education conference. The theme was Access and Equity in STEM Education. Jiwon was nervous, as always, before major talks, but she had given enough presentations now that she knew how to manage the fear. She stood before an audience of educators, administrators, and policymakers. She told her story about growing up on a farm, about Mrs. Henderson submitting her MIT application, about the moment she stood at the whiteboard and shared her proof, about creating the summer program, but then she shifted the focus away from herself. My story is inspiring, I know. People love it. Farm girl makes good. But here's what concerns me, she said. For every student like me who gets an opportunity, dozens don't. Hundreds don't. Thousands don't. I was lucky. I had supportive parents. I had an observant teacher. I had access to books and the internet. Many students don't have those things. She showed slides with statistics. How few students from rural areas attend top universities. How many talented students never even apply because they assume they cannot afford it or would not fit in. How financial barriers prevent capable students from pursuing their dreams. We celebrate individual success stories, she continued. But we need systematic change. We need better funding for rural schools. We need outreach programs. We need scholarships and support systems. We need to tell students from all backgrounds that they belong in science, in mathematics, in research. Not just occasionally. Not just the exceptional few. All of them. The audience listened intently. After her talk, several administrators approached her. They wanted to create similar programs at their institutions. They wanted to partner with MIT's Rural STEM Scholars Program. They wanted to learn from what she had built. Change was happening. Slowly, but it was real. In December, Ji-won went home for winter break. She had not been back since August. The farm looked beautiful in the winter. Snow covered the fields. Ice hung from the barn roof. Everything was quiet and still. Her family welcomed her with hugs and her mother's cooking. Minjun, now 17, had grown taller. He looked more like their father every day. Her little sister, Hana, 15 now, asked Ji-won about college applications. I'm thinking about engineering, Hana said. Maybe civil engineering. Building things? That's wonderful, Ji-won said. Mrs. Henderson said she would help me with applications. Like she helped you. Ji-won smiled. Mrs. Henderson was still there, still looking for talented students, still opening doors. On Christmas Eve, the whole family sat around the kitchen table after dinner. Her father asked about her research and her students. Her mother wanted to hear about the summer program. I'm so proud of what you're doing, her father said. Not just the mathematics. The way you're helping other kids like you. That's the real achievement. I learned it from you and Mom, Ji-won said. You always helped neighbors. Always supported the community. I'm just doing what you taught me. Later that night, Ji-won walked out to the barn, the place where she had spent so many evenings studying, where she had first noticed the irrigation patterns that led to her discovery, where her father had found her working through equations instead of organizing tools. She stood in the cold barn, breathing in the familiar smell of hay and earth. She thought about how far she had traveled, from this barn to MIT, from a nervous freshman to a researcher and teacher, from someone who doubted she belonged to someone who helped others believe they belonged. But she was still the same person. Still Ji-won Park from Kansas. Still someone who saw mathematics in soil and water. Still someone who believed that the best insights came from observation and experience. She heard footsteps behind her. Her father stood in the doorway. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Just thinking. He came to stand beside her. About what? About how everything started here. In this barn. On this farm. Everything I've become, it all traces back to this place. Her father nodded. The best crops have strong roots. They grow up and out, but they stay connected to the soil that nourished them. He looked at her. You're like that. You've grown so much, gone so far, but you're still rooted here. In this family. In this land. That's what makes you strong. Ji-won felt tears in her eyes. I want to do more, Dad. The summer program is just the beginning. I want to create a scholarship fund. A national program. I want to help hundreds of students, not just 20. You will. You've got time. You're only 21. He smiled. Build it slowly. Build it right. Like good farming. You plant seeds, you nurture them, you wait for them to grow. You can't rush it. That conversation stayed with Ji-won as she returned to MIT for her final semester as an undergraduate. She realized her father was right. She did not have to change the world overnight. She just had to keep planting seeds. Keep opening doors. Keep showing students that they could succeed. In May, Ji-won graduated from MIT with highest honors. Her family came to watch her walk across the stage. Mrs. Henderson came too, crying with pride. After the ceremony, they all took pictures in front of the campus. What's next? Mrs. Henderson asked. Graduate school here at MIT, more research. Growing the summer program. And I'm starting a scholarship fund. I've raised $50,000 so far from donors. It's not much, but it's a start. It's more than a start, Mrs. Henderson said. It's a legacy. You're not just solving math problems. You're changing lives. That summer, the second cohort of rural STEM scholars arrived. This time there were 30 students instead of 20. The program was growing, and several students from the first cohort had been accepted to top universities with full scholarships. One was coming to MIT in the fall. Ji-won continued her work through graduate school. She published more papers. She taught more workshops. She gave more talks. The scholarship fund grew. The summer program expanded. By the time she finished her PhD at age 26, she had helped over 200 students from rural communities attend college. Many studied STEM fields. Some became engineers, scientists, mathematicians. Others chose different paths, but all carried with them the confidence that they belonged. Ji-won accepted a professor position at MIT. She would teach and continue her research. But her most important work would always be the students. The ones from farms and small towns. The ones who thought they did not belong. The ones who just needed someone to open the door and say, yes, you can do this. On her first day as a professor, a student knocked on her office door during office hours. She was a young woman with nervous eyes wearing worn boots. Professor Park? I'm Emily. I'm from Iowa. My family has a farm. Ji-won smiled. She remembered the email she had received years ago from a girl in Iowa who loved physics. I think I know you, Ji-won said. Come in, sit down. Emily sat, clutching a notebook. I have a question about one of the problems in your class. It's about mineral distribution patterns. I've been thinking about how water moves through different types of soil on our farm, and I think it might relate to the problem, but I'm not sure if my idea makes sense. Ji-won's heart swelled with recognition. Here it was. Another student with observations from the farm. Another person who saw patterns in nature. Another door opening. Tell me what you see, Ji-won said, handing Emily a piece of chalk. Show me. Emily stood and approached the whiteboard. She began drawing. Fields and soil structures and water paths, just like Ji-won had done years ago in Professor Chen's graduate seminar. Ji-won watched, remembering her own fear and excitement, remembering the moment someone believed in her observations, remembering how everything changed because one teacher saw her potential. Now it was her turn to listen, her turn to encourage, her turn to open doors. Emily filled the whiteboard with her ideas, speaking faster now, more confident. Ji-won listened carefully, asking questions, helping her formalize her thinking. Outside the office window, the MIT campus buzzed with activity. Students rushed to classes. Researchers worked in labs. The great machine of knowledge and discovery turned steadily forward. But in this small office, something more profound was happening. Seeds were being planted. Doors were opening. A student from Iowa was showing her professor what she had seen in the soil, and together they were turning observation into mathematics, experience into innovation, dirt into gold. The cycle continued, as it always would, as long as there were students who observed the world carefully, and teachers who listened, as long as there were farmers' daughters who dared to dream, and professors who handed them chalk and said, show me what you see.